Don't get me wrong, they present a lot of good information, but what's the straight answer? Well, the truth is, have you ever found yourself staring at the clock at work, wondering if it's time to move on? Well, you aren't alone. Anyone that's looking to maximize their career and their lifetime earnings has found themselves asking the question, how long should I really stay at my job? The answer to this question is incredibly important, and it cannot be understated, because studies have shown that people that move jobs more frequently earn more than double those who don't over their lifetime. This video is going to answer the question, and to help us answer it, I'm going to react to CNBC's piece on the topic. Before we dive into it, I'm Seth. This is Acquired Salary, the best living through career mastery. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. I would greatly appreciate if you would drop a like on the video, and it is because support like this helps to grow Acquired Salary's reach so we can continue to give you free tools, information, and perspectives you need to help build the life and career you want. With that, let's dive into it and see what the experts say about the ideal time to stay in a role and when it might be time to jump ship for better opportunities.
95% of American workers said they plan to look for a new job in 2024. Money's a big part of this. 45% of American workers say they need a higher income. Job switchers increase their salary more quickly on average than those who stay put. In February 2024, people who stayed at their job for more than 3 months increased their salary by 5.1% year over year, whereas those who switched jobs increased by 5.9%.
That seems a little bit low, in my opinion. Especially if you're early in your career, you should see somewhere from 10 to 20% if you're switching jobs.
I ended up almost doubling my salary after a year and a half. And then from there, each year, I probably increased my salary from anywhere to $15,000 to $35,000 or $40,000. But
that is pretty accurate if you're in the white collar space. $15,000 to $40,000 in job switches. That's, yeah, accurate.
Hiring professionals stress that it's important to be strategic about job moves.
You don't want to rise up the ranks too quickly and then be this expensive head that's sort of easy to chop in any kind of downturn.
I think companies do.
I disagree with that. You can rise up the ranks as quick as you want as long as you're competent. If you're just really good at negotiating salary increases, then you're going to be at risk of being laid off. However, if I'm an employer and I have an employee that I pay $100,000, which is twice what every other employee is making, but they pull in $1 million, that's a high ROI employee, and I'm not going to fire them. So some companies, big Fortune 500s, they don't necessarily do that level of detailed analysis, but that's just if they're doing general reduction in force or layoffs. So it depends on where you're at. But if you're in a smaller company, you can avoid being put on the chopping block for having a high salary if you provide substantial value based on the skills that you have.
Do expect an unrealistic level of loyalty, but unfortunately we're at their whim a lot of times, right? So we do have to play the game, and that game is making it seem like you're going to spend the rest of your life there. They really do want to be lied to.
So how long is the optimal amount of time to stay at your job for your career advancement, salary, and your well-being? The survey data about why people leave their jobs is pretty consistent across the board. Ranking at the top of the list are wanting a higher salary and not feeling like they have room for growth at their current job. The desire.
I think that is going to be the number one reason. Obviously, people don't just leave their job because they want to leave their job, but there are other contributing factors such as, a toxic work environment or a lack of work-life balance. But yeah, career advancement and salary are two major contributing factors because most people work to live. Well, yeah, they work to live rather than live to work.
Desire for higher salaries may lead people to job hop, which is when a worker jumps from job to job within a short period of time.
Oftentimes, switching companies is the fastest way to get to that next level role in terms of seniority and in terms of your income level. And the reality behind that is in your current company, for you to get promoted, for you to get to the next level, that position needs to open up in a way that it's either someone leaves or they get promoted or the company is growing.
Gen Z.
It's absolutely true. In order to make the fastest jump to the next level, you have to essentially be an external hire at a different company that's growing or has a vacancy because somebody else left. Because overall companies, yeah, you can be at a fast growing company. However, there are still a lot of people that just don't make those moves or aren't getting promoted or aren't leaving. And so those internal opportunities are fewer and farther between than the open job market.
is 36% more likely than other generations to prioritize advancement opportunities. Even if there are opportunities for promotions within their current workplace, they may still find it easier to leave.
A lot of employers are reaching out to people and recruiting them. Workers have more negotiating power that way. You can also find...
Yeah, the number one way to make sure you have good negotiating power if you're seeking a new job is if you're getting contacted by recruiters. So in order to get contacted by recruiters, you need to have a optimized LinkedIn profile, a good network, as well as have your resume circulating on the job boards and those sorts of things. And you'll be more likely to have recruiters contact you and put yourself in a really good position for finding that next role.
Out more easily what wages are available just by going on ZipRecruiter and looking at job postings, whereas perhaps finding out what the opportunities are within your company involves sort of an uncomfortable conversation with your manager.
Other common reasons for leaving are to get better benefits, to escape a toxic work environment, and for better work-life balance.
Exactly what I said. It's going to be escaping a toxic work environment or poor work-life balance. I kind of lump those two together, and then benefits, I kind of lump that into salary. So the three most common reasons are going to be your compensation package, your work environment, and your career growth opportunities.
The ancillary thing is, if I pay people more, would they be happier? If that were true, then investment banks and private equity firms, law firms would be the happiest places in the world to work. They notoriously aren't viewed that way because there's a certain way that you treat people, whether it's benefits or whether it's time off or compensation or quite frankly, just how you treat people on a day in and day out basis with interpersonal skills. Those are the things that end up being more important.
Workers also have...
To his point, some of the highest paying jobs aren't necessarily the best work-life balance, but this goes into the supply and demand issue because there is a very low supply of people that are going to want to do that job or be able to tolerate that job. You have to compensate them very highly. And so that is why those high-paying jobs are not always the best in terms of work-life balance, but it all depends on your personality. Some people really love working in those types of environments.
Career aspirations that may not be fulfilled in their current positions.
Early in my career, I always had the goal of eventually working for myself. So I told myself around the age of 30, try and get enough experience and exposure to the things that are required to have a consulting firm. So each job that I've worked, I've always left a company if I felt like I had already obtained the skill that I needed to obtain. And if I wasn't getting opportunities to obtain the skills that I needed, I went to the next place.
I think that is a very good strategy to implement in your own career. If you're looking at it, you have a season of learning and a season of earning. So when you're in that season of earning, you want to maximize the skills that you're earning. The skills that you are learning, not earning. So the more skills you learn, the more you're going to increase your earning capacity so that when you enter that season of earning, you're going to have a much higher earning capacity.
Humans, we tend to change every 2 to 3 years in terms of our goals, our priorities, our stages of life. And now the younger generations ask themselves, well, how does my career serve me and not the other way around?
There's never a wrong reason to want to leave. If you want to leave, you can leave, right? But you have to be smart about leaving.
Americans consistently stay at their jobs for a median of 3 to 4 years. In 2022, the median tenure was 4.1 years. In 2002, it was 3.7, and back in 1983, it was 3.5 years.
This is very interesting data right here. It shows that the younger generations are not the only ones that are leaving their jobs at a high rate. Overall, though, if you have some more of the historical context, the systemic changes in the employment market occurred earlier than the 80s, so that explains why there's such low tenure, and I think that's probably why they cut the graph off here, because before that there was probably longer tenures, but that was because the incentives were different.
But breaking those numbers down by age paints a clearer picture about how long Americans should stay at their jobs. Between 2002 and 2022, workers aged 20 to 24 typically stayed at their jobs for less than 1.5 years. As you look at older workers, the median tenure increases with each age group.
So looking at this graph, it is self-explanatory because the status quo in the employment market is you have to pay your dues. So that's why you're going to see these people that are in their early 20s, between 20 and 24, only staying for a year and a half because they're being forced to pay their dues. If you want to get rid of that and increase the amount of tenure, you need to make sure that the incentives align as an employer, making sure that you're providing benefits and pay commensurate with the work that they're doing. Because a lot of these early roles, you're doing the same work that people that have been working for 5-10 years have. However, you're not being paid the same. Kind of silly.
I think a lot of people think of job hopping as being generational, but it's actually more driven by age than generation. So our parents' generations at the same age as young people today, a lot of the data shows they quit at very similar rates.
A Bureau of Labor Statistics study found that American adults born between 1957 and 1964 held an average of 12.7 jobs between the ages of 18 and 56, with nearly half of those jobs held before the age of 25.
I think the idea that you have to stay at one company for an extended period of time comes most probably from our families and our parents, because their expectation and their version of success was to stay within one company or at least within one career their entire life.
I think to that point, it's more so for the younger generation's grandparents. Our grandparents taught our parents this, and our parents taught this to us. However, there was that systemic change that I mentioned in terms of like the elimination of pension plans, and kind of the employer loyalty to employees has gone away. That's why, you look back to the old movies. If there's a layoff in an old like holiday movie or something like that, it was a big deal. Well, now it's not as big of a deal because the employer loyalty to employees, and therefore employees' loyalty to employers, has changed, and it's not as big of a deal now. But yeah, it's because our parents, broadly speaking, have not integrated the systemic changes in the employment market to their advice to their children.
Parents would get pensions, they would work for a company for a certain amount of time, retire, and be paid for the rest of our lives. So the incentives have shrunk, and so the loyalty is just not there.
Another thing to consider is a lot of benefits accrue over time. So if you switch companies too quickly, you could be leaving money on the table. For example, some employers won't allow you to keep your 401k match until you've been there for a certain number of years.
I see.
That's a very important point and should be a major consideration when you're thinking about job hopping or answering the question of when you should switch jobs.
A huge wave of Gen Z and millennial professionals asking themselves, is this job, is this career right for me? And what do I want for my career to look like and to feel like? And where do I find this career? Versus feeling like, hey, I have to stay doing what I've been doing in my career.
Recruiters say there's more leeway for job switching earlier in your career.
Gen Z can do that right now because they're in their early 20s. But when they get to their late 20s or their early 30s, they can't be moving like that. You're 22 years old. You're not making any career mistakes right now. There's so many places that you could go and none of them would be a mistake because you're so young and you have so many years to figure out what you want to do. When you're 35, not really, right? Ideally, you're in your career and you're making a good salary with great benefits. And once you have that, you need to be more strategic and intentional about those moves that you make, because now you can make a really bad career mistake.
I disagree with that. I think you can make some bad job hops early on in your career. It's overall, you should be intentional throughout every single career move. If you figure it out early, you're going to be ahead of where you could be if you don't figure it out until your mid-30s. So from that standpoint, you can make bad moves. However, overall, in general, if you're being intentional with the moves that you're making, you're not going to shoot yourself in the foot and make a bad move. And intentionality just needs to remain throughout your entire career so that you live the career and life that you want, not what somebody else wants.
Instead of asking how long you should stay at your job, career experts suggest shifting your focus to how much you've accomplished.
I think the biggest risk with job hopping or leaving your job too early is you not understanding where you are in your development. And that's why I try to tell people, remove your focus on money, especially if you're being compensated okay and you're able to pay your bills and survive. Don't focus on just getting a huge pay bump before you are actually ready, before you have gained the right skills. Don't focus on time, don't focus on money, focus on skills. And if you are comfortable in the skills that you are acquiring, then you are ready to move on to the next level.
That is the exact point that I was making earlier. You can avoid being put on the chopping block by escalating into higher level roles by making sure that you have the skills to demonstrate that value to the employer.
Workers may also want to consider looking at their career as a whole, rather than honing in on only tenure or compensation.
I took a $20,000 pay cut when I job hopped the first time. And I knew that was okay because it would come back tenfold based on the experience I was going to be getting at the new place of work. So I don't focus on the money. And I know that's a privileged thing to say because my roles compensate me well. And at the time when I started my career, I just really shrunk my cost of living, I would say. I lived in a house with 7 other people and my rent was like $500. So after I took the $20,000 pay cut, I ended up almost doubling my salary after a year and a half. And then from there, each year, I probably increased my salary from anywhere to $15,000 to $35,000 or $40,000. And now that I'm an independent consultant, I mean, this is the most that I've earned ever.
To your point, this kind of demonstrates the season of learning versus the season of earning. So the first 10 years of her career from 20 to 30, she was in that season of learning. So she was gaining all the skills important and necessary for her to maximize her season of earning. And that's what she's doing now. So she's a great example of kind of the advice that I'm giving out.
Could deliver a quicker pay raise to switch jobs. Often long-term loyalty and tenure are rewarded in the end. And so if you look at the top 5 highest paid people within a company, they're often the veterans who were there from the start. The company may only want people in senior leadership positions who have a demonstrated track record of reliability, of sustained performance, and of loyalty to the company. Companies don't do promotion.
Her point is valid to a certain degree. If you look at Fortune 500 companies, they're not always hiring people that have been, like, the upper echelons of the company are not always people that have been at the company for the past 20 or 30 years, because external hires can bring in different perspective or different experiences that could fill gaps that are necessary for the company to grow. So it's nuanced, to say the least.
Promotions that often. They might do them once a year, twice a year. And so if you've only stuck around 2 cycles, but the company has a policy of promoting people about once every 3 years, you may miss out on that big payday.
If you are not a self-aware person and you don't do a lot of introspection for what you are and are not ready for, job hopping is not wise, in my opinion. If you're not really able to assess your true skill set, it's going to be hard for you to get the opportunities that you want or reach your end goal.
Timing and the broad.
To your point, yeah, if you're going to be intentional in how you make job switches or job hop, you have to be self-aware, you have to be introspective and identify your own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that's imperative if you're going to go down this route and try and maximize your earnings. If you're going to maximize your lifetime earnings, you have to be intentional and knowledgeable in what's going to be beneficial in the long term.
Broader economy are important factors as well. How difficult would it be to find a new job? In January 2024, the Glassdoor Employee Confidence Index fell to its lowest point since 2016.
Yeah, employee confidence, especially in the white collar space, is very low right now. If you look at the recent jobs numbers and kind of economic projections, things are not looking great, especially if you're in a white collar profession.
You need to figure out like the strategy before you give that notice, because it is taking people 6 to 12 months to land a new position.
A 2023 survey from Insight Global revealed that 55% of unemployed adults said they've been searching for a new job for so long that they are completely burnt out. This trend is hitting Gen Z the hardest, with 2/3 of them suffering from application burnout. But 75% of Gen Z workers would quit their jobs without having a new one lined up.
Gen Z, what are you doing? You always have to have something else lined up, because you're going to create a career gap, and some hiring managers are going to hold that against you. It's not a good idea. But, that's...
I personally would never leave a job if I don't have another opportunity already lined up.
Another part of being strategic is thinking about how employers are viewing a candidate's work history.
For employers, turnover is challenging and very expensive because hiring realistically takes a lot of time and a lot of resources.
It does take a lot of time and it takes a lot of resources, and it seems like most employers don't want to devote the time and resources to do that. It's kind of silly.
90% of organizations are concerned about employee retention. Helping employees upskill is a key component to retaining talent. Companies with strong learning cultures see higher rates of retention, more internal mobility, and a healthier management pipeline compared to those with smaller levels of commitment. But there's also a Goldilocks dynamic to this. Sometimes companies don't mind turnover.
People think that employers don't want any turnover. I disagree with that belief, and I think the companies that don't want turnover are actually creating more problems and mistakes, because that would imply that every person you hire was right. And I have never met anybody who's perfect at anything.
There are many industries that don't.
To his point, that's kind of what I was alluding to with, the company loyalty aspect. Some of the top 5 compensated employees at companies are not going to be people that have been there the entire time, because there is an added benefit to a fresh set of eyes and different perspectives and different problem-solving techniques coming in from an external hire. And that's where you can see, there might be seemingly an internal promotion opportunity that you feel like you're a perfect fit for, but an external hire gets that role and you get stuck in the same position. And that's because there is some added benefit to hiring external employees.
Seem to mind high turnover very much.
But some companies may be taking on a more forgiving attitude when viewing work history.
I think employers are very, very suspicious of workers who switch jobs for a tiny incremental pay raise, but they understand if people are pursuing opportunities to learn more, to sort of advance their careers, to get broader experience with some career goal in mind.
I think
Well, if you're being intentional in the moves that you make, even if it's an incremental pay raise, you can have an explanation for it. Try not to trash like, oh, it was a toxic work environment or I had a bad manager. That's never a good thing to do, because guess what? If they hire you, you're going to be the new manager, and it's only going to be a matter of time before you're like, oh yeah, they're not great. So from that standpoint, though, if you are intentional in the career switches that you make, you can have a good explanation for that if it comes up in an interview.
the people who are in hiring positions now that are millennials, 10 to 15 years into their career, have just a lot more empathy than older generations. And they don't expect the lifelong loyalty that older generations expected.
Most people realistically have some sort of a gap on their resume. And the longer you are in the workplace, the higher the chance that you will have a gap or you will have a short-term 3-month experience on your resume because that didn't work out. Employers are human.
To her point, millennials and Gen Z, this is especially true because they've gone through the 2008 recession as well as COVID-19, and kind of you're pretty much guaranteed to have a job gap at this point on your resume if you've been in the workforce since 2008.
Human. And they know that, they understand that, and the chance that the hiring manager that you're talking to has gone through that themselves is actually very high.
You have to figure out what is the best decision for you, and the only person who can do that is you. And people come to me all the time like, just tell me what to do. And I tell them, I can't tell you what to do. I can tell you like what I would do in this situation, but I can't tell you what to do because this is your career and it's going to affect you.
I don't know about you, but CNBC doesn't directly answer how long you should stay at your job in that video. Don't get me wrong, they present a lot of good information, but what's the straight answer? Well, the truth is, it depends. But if we follow typical career coaching advice, the answer is going to be every 2 to 3 years early in your career, and then reduce that frequency as you get older, depending on your overall career goals. The main factors that you should be considering if you're going to switch roles are skills, promotions, raises, stocks, and benefits. So if you are still learning new skills that increase your earning capacity at your current workplace, that's good. However, you need to compare this. Are you learning new skills at a rate faster than your alternative workplaces? If you are still learning faster at your current workplace, it's probably a good idea to stay in place because you're going to accelerate the season of learning so you can maximize that season of earning. When it comes to promotions, it can be hard to say whether or not you're going to get a promotion, especially since you don't make the ultimate decision. But if you're in the running for a promotion, I suggest keep looking for some different positions at the same time. That way, if you are passed up for it, you can obtain the same raise by switching roles. And if you aren't passed up for it, then you can work in the newly promoted role for 1 to 2 years and then make the next jump to another different employer to get that 10 to 20% raise. When it comes to raises, if you're working a role that doesn't give you an annual raise that at least matches the government's reported rate of inflation, you definitely want to seek new opportunities as soon as possible, considering a 2-year turnaround time. So no sooner than 2 years unless it's a really bad toxic work environment and you're not getting any raises, because the government numbers don't track to reality in people's lived experiences because there's some perverse incentives associated with reporting inflation numbers. And then when it comes to stocks and benefits, in terms of maximizing your financial gains, if you gain stock after, say, 3 years, like at Medtronic or in the med tech space, ensure you stick around for those 3 years because your 401k match is essentially free money. So you don't want to pass up free money. And if there's promotion cycles within that 3 years, you might get that promotion and kind of follow that rule of promotions. Overall, what do you think? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you've made it this far into the video, you may as well like the episode and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on future videos to help you master your career. Keep in mind, this is all general advice. If you need help with a specific application, join the Acquired Salary community using the first link in the description below, and we can schedule a consultation to go over on how to apply these concepts to your specific situation. While you're at it, consider watching my video on why the job market is so hard right now, as it's another important thing to consider when thinking about switching jobs. Until next time, thank you.